Now I'll go try to share my screen. Hopefully, all right, it's still there. Let's see if this worked. This is always the tricky part. Can folks see that? Yes, all right, good. So,
Yes, we can.
that is not what I wanted to do. Hold on, sorry. There we go. All right. We'll start here. This is going well so far. Great. So here we are. Tonight is part 2 of our presentation. So we did part 1 in the fall when we talked about kind of the college search process. So what students need to do in 11th grade to start looking at schools, finding schools that they want to visit and then possibly apply to, what to do on visits and so forth. So this part is going to be kind of the next steps. You did not need to come to part 1 to come and see this part. And then if you wanted to, you didn't have the opportunity and you're still looking at, you know, that part, you're still in the process of searching, as many 11th graders are. You know, you can go back and view that. It's on the website. If you're not sure where to see that, you can always go into the guidance office and speak to any of the guidance counselors. They can show you how to access that. So that is up on the website. And again, we went through that kind of process. So tonight we're really going to focus on the application process. Many juniors get going pretty early. It's not like the old days where you really didn't start to the fall of your senior year. Now you should really be thinking about what you need to do. We're going to take you through those steps, how to ask teachers for recommendations, what the Common App is, what you should be doing when you do visit colleges, and how you're going to look at that. So that's what tonight is about. Like I said, we're going to do the first part, and then we're going to have a guest speaker from Bridgewater State who's going to do the second part of the training. So. All right. So just a reminder who we all are. As you can see, I didn't put this presentation together because they put me at the bottom, but I'm Vinny Searcy. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel, and I oversee guidance and a bunch of other things within the school system. So the really important people are here tonight. Jen Prue, she's one of the guidance counselors and sort of the academic coordinator, we call it, of the guidance department. And she works with students whose last names end in A all the way through CH, and anybody that is in the GRIP program. And then Shannon Griever, she works with students from CI to I. And then Allison Warren, who is working with students from J to O. And also, if you've done any kind of dual enrollment, she works with those students as well, or helps them with that part of it. And then Kay Nesbitt was not able to be here tonight, but she does P to Z, and then students working in the DHH READS program or in the STEP program. And then one of the most important people, again, who's not here tonight, but Melissa Thompson is our administrative assistant. So she can help with a variety of things, set up appointments with your counselors if you need them, look at community service, help you with transcripts and a variety of other things. So please feel free, you know, reach out, utilize the services that we have, speak to your counselors. It's really important that you stay connected. And for us as well, because as you see, as we go through this process, there's information we're going to need from you in order for us to do our part to help you. So help us to help you by keeping in touch and answering the emails, staying in touch with your guidance counselors. So there's a variety of ways to stay connected with us. Obviously, there's email, there's personal visits, there's appointments, there's all of those kinds of things. And that goes for parents as well. But we also have a guidance Google site. Students have had access, and we will, there'll be monthly newsletters so to keep you up to date on what's happening, what kinds of things should be done, what are the deadlines, what colleges, what visits are we having, all of those kinds of things. It has information about college planning, admissions visits, and just anything that's guidance related, both for college, but also for things like career exploration, internships, things like that. We also have a Twitter account, and we really try to update that to make sure that we're hitting the big events, any kind of high school events that are going on, links to webinars from college planning, financial aid, et cetera. And then just reminders, especially about timelines, things that are going on, SATs, those kinds of things. We have a junior assembly, had a junior assembly. We just had it. And we went over basically everything that's on this PowerPoint. a little bit more details tonight around certain areas. And then again, we have the guest speaker who really kind of gets into the more details. We did not have that for the juniors. We have limited times, as you know. But they did go over this. This will be up on the website as well, along with this whole presentation and this video. So there's lots of ways to kind of check in to make sure you're doing things if you want to rewatch things that we've done, look at PowerPoints, get links, and so forth. And then for those who did take part in part 1 and are already involved, or maybe you've spoken to your guidance counselors, you can continue to add to colleges I'm thinking about to your Naviance list. Please don't forget to do that. As you're going through and as you're thinking about colleges, as you're trying to figure out, yeah, maybe I want to do this one, maybe I don't, it's okay. Add it to your college you're thinking about. You can always either take that off or just move only the ones you want to the actual college you're applying. Colleges you are applying to. So with that, I'm going to send it over to guidance counselors.
Okay, so basically what we're going to kind of go over is just the typical college app responsibilities for students. And the main thing in the application is the Common App application, or there's going to be the institution specific application. And then there's a college essay and any other supplemental writing that the college will ask for. And those will typically all be listed in Common App. In the college essay, they will be starting hopefully at the end of this year within their English classes. There's the application fee. If they are requiring the standardized test scores, and
sorry,
that's okay.
My computer is not doing well tonight. I don't know what is happening. Why did it stop doing that?
I can't. Okay. Let me see. Standardized test scores. Instead, so you don't have to go back. But it's just briefly outlining things that you have to do, like a letter of rec, the SAT or ACT. Some schools still are test optional. So that's just a brief rundown of what we're going to go over. So there are different types of applications, and you'll see the little icon next to electronic, Common App, or mail. These are the little icons that are within Naviance. So when a student pulls over a college I'm thinking about, and this is a college I'm applying to, they really have to be aware of the type of application. So electronic means that the application is submitted on the college website. So the college has their own application. However, we can still submit our portion through Naviance. Common App, that CA, and also the electronic applications are submitted through the Common App website. And the real big deal here is that students need to match their Common App and their Naviance accounts. And we will be going into LLBs next year and making sure that the students match them and show them how to do that. And there are links in here to also show students who are ahead of the game and want to start that process early. They can begin that process as well. And then mail. There are very few schools, but there are some out there that still will only take application materials through mail. Transcripts, letters of rec, everything needs to be through the mail. If that is the case, there is a form down in guidance where you have to go see Ms. Thompson. You have to fill out the form, and that will tell us who and what school, where we need to send it, and we will get all the documentation we need, and we'll send it out. The main concern is the student has to keep track of those schools in every single time. So their first time they apply, then the mid-year, and then if they do decide to go to that school, the final transcript. Every single time they need something sent, they need to come down and fill out that form. So that's just a lot more, I would say, like pressure on the student of keeping track of all of those materials and making sure that they're filling out that form. So everything gets sent by the due dates. And then when to apply. There's 4 basic types. There's regular decision, which is non-binding. It's the typical kind of option out there. And the dates typically fall within December and February. Rolling admissions, it's a wide range. They'll have like a really far end date typically, but if you decide to apply very early before the end date, which you should, they'll go through your application and tell you as soon as they receive your application. It's not waiting until that end date. The one thing that students need to understand with rolling admissions is, let's say the due date is in April, don't wait until January, February, March, April. At the end, you want to fill it out and send in your application as soon as possible. I actually had a student 2 years ago who waited until February, and then when she went to go open up the application, it was no longer there because they only have so many applicants that they'll take, and they fulfilled their quota because it's rolling. So as soon as they get an application, they'll make a decision. As soon as they get it, they'll look at it and make that decision. Early action is for students that want to know it's before the regular deadlines and you get those admissions decisions earlier. Early action is different than early decision because it's not binding. And those are typically in November. We have been seeing some October lately. But again, early action, a lot more students are opting for those because they do want those answers a little bit early. Early decision, you have to make sure you're not confusing it with early action because early decision is binding. So when you fill out that form, there's actually something in Naviance saying that you understand if you are applying, you get in, you are going, no matter what. It doesn't matter about the financial aid. It is a binding contract and you will go. And again, those are typically in November. You do get the decision earlier, and it doesn't matter what the financial aid package is. Like I said, because it is binding. But again, we have been seeing a little bit of those in October as well.
I think it's important to understand you don't apply to multiple places for early decision.
Yes.
They do track that. We've heard of cases where students have lost, they've been accepted early decision to 2 places. And then they've picked one and they know, and then they've rescinded both applications. So early decision really has to be, this is absolutely no matter what the place I'm gonna go.
I actually was just talking to somebody about that today when I was up at Assumption, and they applied to, I believe, Tufts. And once they applied early decision, they had to withdraw every single application that they had out there for early action and other options. They wanted to do another early decision, but they had to withdraw them. So Common App, it's another platform that we use, and this is where you're really going to be applying to colleges for the majority of colleges. And you'll have to create an account, using your own personal email, And you want to make sure that you're not using your school email, because once you leave Norton, your school email goes away and you won't be able to get on. So if you ever transfer, you decide to go to a different school, all of your information's there and you want to be able to use it again. Again, we'll have a link so that way it'll take you to Common App and you can start the process. I would recommend starting your Common App now, getting in there, and every school will be listed. And there's common features to every application, so you only have to fill it out once. And then each college might have some supplemental essays or questions for you to answer. If they are supplemental and they're optional, they're really not optional. You really need to fill those out as well. So just make sure that you're making sure that you're hitting all the questions and all the essays that you need to for each particular college. And then this is the Common App cheat sheet where I was talking about the different links. And again, this will be sent out to all the students as well and also uploaded online. So you can watch the video on how to set up an account, how to use the dashboard, adding colleges, linking Naviance. If you want to get ahead of the game, if you need help with any of this, you can come down and see us in guidance. We're also going to go over this again in the fall. The one thing I will say is we do not have access to Common App like we do to Naviance. So if you lose your password, we can go in and in Naviance, we can go in and reset your password. We cannot do that in Common App. We do not have any connection to Common App. So it's really important as you're starting this process to write down all your username and passwords for College Board, for Common App, and all the different websites that you're going to be using.
You shouldn't be using your student your student email for any of this stuff because it goes away. So whether it's SAT, Common App, like I don't remember if they use that, but setting up your own email for college, you get everything sent to you to that email. It's a great way of sort of managing all of this, but understand that's an important piece to remember in keeping this organized. And for students that are starting now, you do a little bit at a time. You're not trying to get it all done at either at the end of the summer or during the middle of your senior year, or the first semester of your senior year. So it really is important to try to do this a little bit at a time and make it manageable.
So one of the things that you can start at the end of this year is requesting your letters of recommendation. And you really want to think about having at least 1 to 2 teachers and the guidance counselor. You don't necessarily need a guidance counselor recommendation for every school you apply to. You really need to go into the requirements for all the schools and find out how many letters of rec for teachers and if the guidance counselor is required. Most of the time, guidance counselors are required. However, if you only have a max of 2 letters of rec and a guidance counselor is not required, then if there is a teacher or 2 that you really, really want letters from, you can use those instead of a guidance counselor. But when you have decided on who you're going to ask, you need to really have that face-to-face conversation. You can't just go into Naviance and request them. You need to ask them first. So that's the first step. And then once they agree, you go into Naviance and you request. Do not request the guidance counselor. Guidance counselors do not need to be requested through Naviance. So it's only the teachers. Again, like I said, you need to check to see how many letters of recommendation the school would like and only request that many. Because if they're only looking, if the max is 2 and you're like, well, I'm going to get 4, but you know, number 3 and number 4, I don't really want, but I'm just going to get just in case. If number 3 and number 4 actually upload their letters first, those are the ones that are going to get sent out. So you really need to be specific and make sure you're only asking the people that you want. And again, if you want the guidance counselor to write a letter for you, you need to fill out the brag sheet. So again, you need to come ask us. And same thing as the teacher, you know, do you mind doing a letter of rec for us? Yes, absolutely. Fill out the brag sheet. The brag sheet is linked in multiple places online, on the school website, on our website. We can send it to you if you want. It's linked in, I believe, in this presentation as well, and then you can share it with us. The one thing about the brag sheet is you want to put as much information as you possibly can, because as much as we know about you, there are definitely things that we don't, and this is your chance to highlight things about yourself that won't be in your regular application. So you're essentially writing part of your letter of rec. So it's a good time to share a lot of things that you want us to know about you. And the one thing to know is if you're submitting a letter from someone outside of the high school, they cannot go through Naviance. It's only people within the school that can go through Naviance. So you're going to either have to have them email or send their letter directly to the schools, which means providing stamps, postage, email addresses, any of those things. Guidance cannot send it, and we can't send it through Naviance. And then this again is the tutorial on how to go through Naviance. Again, it's something that we go over again next year, but this is a great thing to start now. And teachers actually like you to ask at the end of your junior year. So that way they can start to work on it over the summer. At the beginning of the school year, they're inundated with requests for letters. They're inundated with the beginning of the school year logistics, beginning of the school year, you know, getting used to all the students, just like students are coming in, and just everything that happens, the chaos of the beginning of the school year. And then on top of getting asked for letters of rec. So it's really good to ask them at the end of the junior year so they have this time to write the letter, and you know that you're going to get a really well-written letter.
So I'm just to clarify a few things about the brag sheet and kind of reiterate what Ms. Prue said. So the brag sheet is just a document just for your counselor and your teachers. Sometimes people get confused because they think that we're sharing that with colleges. That's not the case. The brag sheet is just one document the student fills out explaining all their extracurriculars, sports they play, outside jobs. And there's also a parent section as well, which is really helpful for us because I know sometimes students have a hard time or don't always feel comfortable bragging about themselves. But it's a great opportunity for the parent to put some input in and highlight some of the things that are really important about their child's profile or something that's unique about their child. So make sure if there's a parent on here listening, ask your student for the brag sheet or send them the little blurb you want to write about so that we can include it on the brag sheet. And like Ms. Prue said, the more information, the better, just so we can write you a really thoughtful and thorough letter. We will share the link with you multiple ways, and there's also a QR code in the guidance office. If you're just walking by and you want to scan that really quick, you can have quick access to start filling out that brag sheet. So the next thing I'm going to mention is SAT and ACT scores. And I know a lot of times this is a confusing topic for a lot of people because so many colleges have gone test optional. So that is still the case in most cases, but it's really important to do your research individually with the college. So Naviance is a great tool, but your best bet when you're really finalizing your list is to go to the admissions page, the undergraduate admissions page for the college that you're interested in. And usually it's worded in a little bit different ways, but if you look for the application requirements, you can see if a standardized test is required or if it is test optional. So if you do decide to take the SAT, a lot of times juniors are thinking about that now. Near the end of their junior years when people start to make their plans about when they're going to take it, or very early in senior year, because you want to be mindful if you take it too late in senior year, you don't want to run into coming up too close on an early action deadline. So say you think, oh, I'll take the SAT in October, but then you find out you're applying early action, you might not have the scores in time by the time you want to submit all the application materials. So if you're thinking about the SAT or the ACT, now is the time to really start thinking about that and planning that out. And you can decide ultimately if you want to send those scores, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but it's also your responsibility to send your scores. So similar to Common App, we can't log into your College Board account and send SAT scores for you. So just checking, making sure you're aware of those deadlines, that you're registering. I think it's usually about a month in advance you have to register for those SAT or ACT tests, and reviewing the college websites and looking at their admissions statistics and kind of see where you measure up in related to what the college is looking for.
One of the things I would say is if you are somebody who is who has a 504 plan or an IEP and you want your accommodations, you need to reach out to your guidance counselor, have that conversation, and then they will reach out to me and I have to put that in through either College Board or ACT. We don't decide. I put it in there, I give all the supporting documents, and then they make a decision and will notify both you directly by email and then us by phone. I think they actually mail you a letter as well as to what those accommodations that they've approved are and what that will mean. Most people will still get their accommodations and will be able to take it at their testing sites. Occasionally, there are situations where it has to be arranged for us to give it to you at school. But again, that is up to you to make sure you reach out and let us know that you want to have those accommodations as part of your standardized testing.
And so since many schools are test optional still, in general, I think I can speak for the other counselors. We do encourage you to try to take the SAT or the ACT if you have the opportunity to do so. It's just a good way to kind of see where you measure up, and also just to have a baseline if you're comparing yourself to some of the statistics from the college. So in general, it's a good thing to try. Most students took the PSAT earlier this year, so you have that experience, but it's also helpful if you can take it and then decide ultimately if you want to send the scores. If you're unsure, you can talk with us. You can also informally reach out to the admissions office at the college and just kind of, you don't have to give your personal information, but you can kind of give a hypothetical and say, you know, in general, this is around my GPA. This was my SAT score. I'm interested in the finance major. What would be your recommendations on submitting those scores or not? And, you know, they can't always give you a concrete answer because, you know, there's a lot of gray in that, but it doesn't hurt to try and ask and just get as much information as you can. And then, so if you are going to go test optional, it's just, this slide is just reiterating that you want to be really confident in the other aspects of your application. So if you're going test optional, the school is going to have to look at other ways to kind of get an assessment of who you are as a student. So they're going to be looking at your transcript and checking the rigor of your academics, you know, how many honors and AP classes you've taken, what kind of opportunities you've had for leadership and roles you've taken on, sports, jobs, and then also your personal essay. So you want to have all the other components be really strong if you know you're the student that testing maybe isn't your strong suit.
And then another thing that we wanted to bring to your attention, especially since, you know, senior year, it's usually around the time that students are approaching their 18th birthday. For all of you male students, keep in mind that you must register with the Selective Service within 30 days of your 18th birthday. And by doing this, you know, it helps you stay eligible for different jobs, potentially college loans and grants, and even sometimes your driver's license. But in the meantime, it's really important just to get connected and connect with schools as much as possible. And I really am encouraging all of my students to explore and really use this spring into the summer and even the beginning of next fall, just kind of getting a feel of what is a good fit for them. Also, by exploring, it's important to connect with the schools in various ways because colleges do want to determine who's interested and who is most likely to attend their school. So for schools that you are really seriously thinking about, it's really important to go to different open houses, visits, and tours that are available. For most of the schools around the area, tours have opened back up again, which can be really helpful. If you're interested in a school that's further away, since COVID happened, virtual tours have become a popular option. So while it's not the same as setting foot on campus, it's still a really good way to get a feel of if you could see yourself there. And in going on visits and tours, I encourage everyone to take a notebook, you know, jot down the things that you like or don't like, you know, take into consideration the surrounding area, the size of the campus, everything that you like and don't like can really help you try to narrow down your search a little bit more. Some schools may offer the option to shadow a student for a day, so you can really kind of get a feel of what the classes might be like and the day-to-day might be like. Some schools offer interviews as well. But a really easy way to stay connected is by connecting with their social media. So oftentimes schools will have, you know, Instagram accounts, Twitter accounts. Some may have some specifically designated for undergraduate admissions. So it's not only a good way to show the school that you're interested, but also a good way to keep up with, you know, different things coming up and announcements that they have as well.
And one of the things I just wanted to mention about the emails that you get, open them up and don't just, yep, I like this school and move on. Open them up, click around, stay on the site for a little bit. Some of the schools actually track it and track to see how long you're on the site and what you open up. So even if you're really interested in a school and you've gone there a couple times and you kind of already know most of what's in the email or, whatever, sit with your computer while you're watching TV and just click on it, leave it open, click something else and leave it open, because some schools, like I said, are tracking that, and they're going to invest more time and money into a student that they feel is definitely going to come, versus somebody who's not. And so you're showing high interest by doing that.
Definitely. And we've gone over a lot of information so far tonight, but we'll go ahead and kind of summarize the next key steps to focus on this year. So beginning of the year, some students were hopefully thinking about different colleges and careers that they might be interested in, potentially thinking about the SATs, and then ultimately preparing to take them. So the real focus from now until we come into school next fall is going to be to continue to research schools. If you add schools on Naviance to the colleges I'm thinking about list, that is extremely helpful, because as counselors, that's something we have access to. So when you come in the fall, if you add schools there, we'll already kind of have an idea of what you're thinking and be able to talk to you more in depth about those schools. Like we've mentioned, request letters of recommendation. If you request before the end of the year, it will save your teacher some stress, and they'll be able to write that you a really good letter. But you just want to make sure that you ask in person. Most English classes, you'll begin working on your college essay in class. But so it's a good idea to start thinking about potential topics, whether you've had a unique experience, if you spend a lot of time volunteering in your community that you want to highlight, just start thinking about potential topics there. But it's really important just to have conversations with your family about your potential plans, especially talking about potential budget, and all of those important key factors that will ultimately help you make your decision. And like I've said, just continue to tour and visit schools as much as possible. And then coming into the fall of next year, as we've mentioned, we will be having LLB lessons and really focus on the nuts and bolts of both the Naviance portion of everything, as well as the Common App portion, and especially matching the two. And we'll go over in depth with requesting letters of recommendation and transcripts. We are available for individual appointments with students. We can help with all aspects of the college application process, aside from financial aid. That's typically not something that we help too much with, but we can certainly give you resources if you need them.
And we'll be having some additional financial aid nights as well.
Definitely. And then I know we've talked a little bit before, I believe in the first seminar that we gave, and also at the junior LLB presentation the other day, about college search tools. Naviance has one called the Super Match, but there's also a lot of various options out there that you can use to help your search process. One being the college scorecard. So it's a good way to search schools you're already interested in, or search for a field of study that you're interested in, and we'll pull up different schools. If you're not sure, you can always do a custom search, and you can put in the criteria that you're interested in, and it will help pull up schools that might fit what you're looking for.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and we can field any questions now that people might have about this particular part of the presentation. All right. I don't see any, but as I said, feel free to come down and meet with your guidance counselors if you have questions about the process. I can't stress enough, especially if you're looking at doing early decision or early action, to start working on the Common App or your applications is as soon as the late spring, early summer. Take it one bit at a time, that way you're not trying to do it all at once. Bite it off in small chunks, and it'll be a lot easier to swallow than trying to take the fire hose kind of approach it at the beginning of the fall. So looks like we do. Where would you get PSAT scores? All right. We can get that for you. I believe you go down. I think Ms. Thompson has access to that. If not, I can get it for him. Do you guys have direct access?
They should be listed in their Naviance account as well.
Okay.
I'm unsure of the date of how far after, if they're already uploaded. But Ms.
I believe she
Thompson
uploaded
has-
them. Yeah. So I think they're there in your Naviance. If not, you go down, see Ms. Thompson, she'll be able to get those for you. All right. I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait, maybe they pop up faster. No, I think that's it. So without any other questions, we're gonna move on. Thank you, Allison, Shannon, and Jen for joining us today, and we will let you guys go, and then we'll move on to the second part of our presentation. So have a good night. Todd, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, I don't know, this is like year 3 or 4, I think we've done this. I
Yeah,
remember
no, it's become a
correctly.
nice tradition.
Yes, it has. Todd, I'm gonna kind of let you introduce yourself and, you know, your kind of what you're going to be doing. I know you're going to be sharing your screen and your presentation. Again, I can't thank you enough for being a really big part of what we do. And I know a number of parents have said in past years, now that we've recorded these, that these have been really helpful for them, and they've gone back and watched them and recommended them. And, you know, I think a lot of people don't necessarily come to the evening show, but they get it up on the website and they watch it, because I get the questions later on, a week from now or 2 weeks from now or even longer. So, you know, I do appreciate you being here. And so I am going to, I'm going to let you take over.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to situate my screen here and share the slides. Wonderful. Okay. Well, it's always a pleasure to be here with Norton High School, and especially with this presentation. You know, I understand firsthand just how scary a college search can be. In addition to being an associate dean of admission, I'm also the dad of 3 teenagers, and we successfully launched our oldest off to college this past fall. But my next oldest is a junior in high school, very same age as your own students, and my youngest is a freshman in high school. And I can tell you, having been into the admissions business, that the coronavirus has had significant implications on people's college search process. And so, you know, it's my pleasure to spend, you know, the next probably 20, 25 minutes or so, just highlighting for you some of the ways that the coronavirus has altered the college search process in some surprising ways, right? Because it's not all bad news. Certainly the pandemic is a horrific thing, but in terms of how it relates to your college search process, there's some things that kind of work to your advantage. So I'll highlight them for you here on this slide. And then what I'm going to do is go into each one in some more detail in subsequent slides. So the first thing that I want to share with you is that colleges have gotten better about doing more innovative online outreach. I'll expound on that a little bit later, but it's easier for you to connect with colleges now than it probably was before the pandemic, believe it or not. And because of the circumstances surrounding the pandemic, the many students who apply to colleges can look forward to receiving more offers of admission, and potentially from stretch schools. So that's hopefully exciting news for you. And then third and finally, we're going to talk about the fact that there are more generous aid offers available at many schools as a result of the pandemic. So let's get into innovative outreach. And by that, I mean, first and foremost, and again, I'm going to echo a lot of what was probably told to you earlier tonight, there is no substitute for in-person campus tours. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But there are alternatives that are probably less effective, but still useful. One being virtual and self-guided tours. And another is just the value of filling out online inquiry forms and getting in the information flow that's available from various colleges and universities. So let's get into each one of these, beginning with the fact that there is no substitute for an in-person campus tour. You know, we're fortunate at this point in the pandemic that many campuses are now open for tours. That hadn't been the case 12 months ago. So I cannot stress enough the importance of getting out and seeing these places for themselves, because honestly, if you visit enough university websites or read the brochures, they all start to look the same, right? They all have these beautiful buildings with a little cupola like you see on your screen here, right? They all have pictures of shiny, happy people and in the prettiest places that they can find on their campuses. And it all starts to mash into one. And so it really does help to get onto a campus and see it for yourself, you know, see the whole place in its entirety. But more importantly, you see the students and the faculty and the staff, get a sense of like the vibe for the place. How do they feel? Do they feel tense? Are they relaxed? Are they happy to be there? Are they just keeping their head down and plowing through the day? And that's really what we in the admissions business talk about as fit. And there's really, again, no substitute for gauging that and stepping on campus itself. And I always make the comparison with buying a car, right? You wouldn't buy a car unless you test drove it. You're going to pay a lot more for your college education than you will your first half dozen cars. So get out there and take it for a test drive, kick the tires, see how it handles, and whether it's a good fit for you. So definitely do in-person on-campus tours. Summertime's a great time to do that if you can. Work family vacations around it and so forth. But start local. Start with some local schools, at least as a baseline comparison. So when you do start to venture out, you have something to compare it to. But if getting to campuses is not as convenient, or heaven forbid, knock on wood, things don't get crazy again with the pandemic and things start shutting down, virtual tours are another alternative. So even if colleges didn't have virtual tours before the pandemic, they sure do now. So it's become a booming business. And they're, again, not as robust, but they do give you a sense of the place in a way that you might not in a static page of a brochure or even in a website. They're very carefully curated, but it does give you a sense of the aspects that they feel are their best selves. And then, of course, if campuses do end up closing down, or if you find yourself traveling in off hours or what have you on your college tours, most places now will have self-guided tour options. You see on the screen here, we've got little mailboxes outside of our welcome center, but many places will also have a virtual walking tour sort of a situation. And so you can just walk the campus. I mean, all of these campuses, regardless of the pandemic status, have always been open to the public to be able to walk on in most cases, so that you can explore on your own. So that's another possibility to consider as well. The third way that you should definitely be doing online and innovative outreach is filling out inquiry forms. So what you see here on your screen is a traditional inquiry form that you might encounter in person, right? So when an admission representative comes to Norton High School for a high school visit, or you go to a college fair, something along those lines, you fill these things out, you hand them back to the admission representative, or you pop them in the mail and you get on the mailing list. So there are online alternatives. Every campus is going to have a request information sort of a button. My son, who's a junior, and I just went through a bunch of schools and got him on the mailing lists. And of course, you get a deluge of emails, but also we still send paper mailings, as quaint as that may be. So this information again can be helpful to whittle down the universe of possibilities. And again, to echo advice you guys were given earlier tonight, I cannot stress enough the importance of creating a special email account just for the college search process. It is so helpful, not just because your high school email address goes away, as was cited earlier, but that you have one place you can go and get all that college information, because it's going to flood your inbox. It really will. It gets crazy at times, depending on how many schools you connect with, and schools at the same time as you're taking your PSATs and so forth, and then your SATs. We're buying names from the College Board. So schools that you haven't even heard of before are going to be sending you mailings and sending you emails. So you can look forward to that. But if you have your own separate email account, what's helpful about this is that you can also provide access to your family. And what's great, you can literally stay on the same page with this process. Now, I know some parents want to have more of a hands-off approach, and I respect that. That's completely fine. Myself, with my own student last year, in the midst of the pandemic, I needed to drag him kicking and screaming through the college search process. So I wanted to have access to the emails, make sure that we weren't missing important deadlines or documents and things that I needed to help him gather. So it can be really useful. And again, you finish your college search, you can shut it down, or you can leave it open in case you decide to transfer later. So it's an option that I definitely encourage you to avail yourself of for sure. So transitioning to the second topic on our agenda for my presentation is to talk about more offers of admission and what that means exactly. So again, kind of highlight this topic. We're going to talk about the demographic decline that we're suffering, that you may or may not be aware of, but it keeps us awake at night in the admissions business for sure. And we're going to talk about how the economic crisis is impacting admissions decisions and how that can benefit you guys, believe it or not. And then finally, this phenomenon of students staying closer to home, at least during the pandemic, which may be changing a little bit. And I'll explain that to you guys in a bit. So as you may or may not know, there are just fewer students of college-bound age graduating from high schools for the next 15 years, especially here in the Northeast. You can see on the national map here, it illustrates that the college-bound population on average nationwide is going to drop 15% between 2025 and 2029. So pretty quick drop there. And it's going to continue to decline for several other percentage points for the next few years. And when we look at the zoom in on that here, you can see that it's even more drastic in our region, right? You can see, sort of that 9.4% drop in Bristol County and 10.3 there just north. And the fact is, it's just, we're just having fewer kids, and the problem's even worse in the Northeast and in Massachusetts, where it's expensive to raise a family. So folks are moving out of the Northeast to other regions of the country. And so, this is got serious implications for the college search process. And the reason being is that, if you imagine there's at last count about 100 different colleges and universities here in Massachusetts, right? So my little attempt at drawing colleges and universities are on your screen. And so, as long as that number stays roughly the same, we've all been competing for, the same pool of prospective students. And let's assume up until before the demographic decline, everyone had their populations and they were filling their classes and life was just grand for people in college admissions. But now, because of the demographic decline, what we're finding is there's fewer students, but just as many colleges and universities competing for those fewer students, right? So it really does benefit those students who are in the college search process, at least for the next few years, because you guys are hot commodities. There's just fewer of you out there with more of us competing for you. So in this next slide, I want to take a minute to pull back the curtain on the college admission process a bit for you, and share with you the school's perspective on this, because you guys as applicants are undoubtedly obsessing about acceptance rates for the schools on your list. You may be seeing them in a Navion search or in other places, and they tell you the percentage of the applicants that they admit. So, it's the lower the number, the harder it is to get into that school, right? So for example, Harvard, one of the most prestigious institutions in the entire planet, has about a 5%, historically 5% acceptance rate. I think it actually went down as low as 2% this past year, when everyone thought that they could get into Harvard because they went test optional. And in fact, you still have to be extraordinary to get in. So, so that number might even be a bit lower this past year. But on the other end of the equation, us admissions professionals, we obsess over what we call our yield rate. So the yield rate is the percentage of accepted students that actually enroll in our institution, right? Because not everyone we offer admission to decides to come to us. Hopefully they have multiple offers, right? And they've applied to enough different schools that they can choose then at that point where they decide to go. And so again, to put this into perspective, and not to pick on Harvard, right? But when we talk about yield rates for Harvard, it's 82%. So you would think everyone who gets into Harvard is going to Harvard, right? But no, some people go to MIT and Yale and other places, right? So if not even Harvard can bank on 100% yield rate, then what hope do mere mortals like the rest of us in higher ed have?
We actually had somebody who got accepted to Harvard who has decided to go somewhere else. So there you go.
It happens. It happens.
It happens. We have one did it this year. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we actually Bridgewater had a student who got admitted to Harvard for graduate school and turned him down and went to Caltech instead because she got full funding. So it happens. There are better offers. So, but to put it in perspective, for a state university like Bridgewater or UMass, many of us have about a 65 to 70% acceptance rate, and our yields are about 30-35%, right? So you can just imagine how difficult it is for us to project out what it is that our class is going to be like because that's the trick for us, right? We want to recruit as many applicants as we can, get as many students to apply that we can then admit. And then we don't want to admit too many that our class gets full and then we run into problems. We don't have space, we don't have housing, we can't get enough classes, right? So it's a fine line that we have to tread here. But the trick is, of course, we've had historical data. We can look at the past to help us predict the future. Well, not since the pandemic, right? It's all out the window. It was especially scary in the first year or so. Now that we're about 2 years, 2.5 years into this, we've learned to take 5-year averages and so forth, but it's still kind of a guessing game for us. So many institutions have erred on the side of caution and admitted more students than they might have in the past because they want to make sure they hit the right incoming class size, right? So again, this benefits you guys. This is sort of inside baseball information, but I think, if anything, it should be encouraging for you folks to think that you may apply to schools and get in that you might not have gotten into 5 years ago because of these circumstances. So, again, schools may be sending more acceptances to get the same number of students enrolled. So that, of course, benefits you guys. So let's talk for a moment about the economic crisis, and inflation and so forth, and the roller coaster stock market. And fortunately, we're coming out of the doldrums of unemployment rates, but it's scary. It's scary as a parent, as somebody, either if you've cleared your debt so you can cash flow your kids, or you've saved money, or you were just hoping to roll with the tide here. It can be frightening to think about how uncertain things are in the economy, and it's absolutely impacting the college search process without a doubt. And what we're seeing is there's implications all up and down the price point scale. So, for example, those students who were planning to pay for privates or go to out-of-state publics, where they may be paying a premium, might be thinking a little more conservatively and thinking about places that might be a little bit more affordable, and where they don't have to rely on financial aid or future earnings. And we've even seen this at Bridgewater, where 30% of our students are considered high need, Pell eligible. And, for us, we saw many of our students who opted to go to community college, and live at home and control costs, or students who were at the community colleges who just decided to go out and work with jobs where they could find them. So, again, because of this sort of trickle down effect, is that, it's throwing yield rates off for everybody. And again, it can benefit, applicants, entering into the admissions process, this year and certainly for next for you guys. And, even before the pandemic, we were seeing, students who were shifting in terms of their selection and their preferences and so forth. It seems like this cohort of students actually like their families and aren't opposed to staying closer to home. And I think that trend was accelerated certainly during the pandemic when the situation was so fluid. We see, hotspots even now starting to pick up yet the latest variants. And in some cases, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, we saw the really hot spots in the Northeast that, students from outside the Northeast weren't as keen coming in, because it was scary. And so that has implications, as do also international applicants. And I know even before the pandemic, there were issues with, students, especially from China, and issues, with, the trade war picking up but it's easy to imagine that international applicants in general are down. We see, I should say, I just read an article this past week. It does show that the international applications are starting to trend up now that the pandemic has settled down. But again, as tensions rise, in Eastern Europe, it can have implications on how comfortable some students are, traveling stateside here from abroad. So, being in a region that draws a lot of international students, Boston in particular draws a lot of international students. There are some instances, many schools in Boston rely heavily on international enrollment. Seen numbers at BU being as high as 30%. And so I know certainly during the pandemic, their international applications were down. You might have local students who were applying to big name schools in the Boston area or in New York that has a big international population as well, may be getting admitted because the international applicant pool isn't as significant. So again, that's another trend that may be benefiting you guys in terms of more offers of admission. So let's transition to the third and final topic, which are more generous aid offers. And so here I want to highlight the fact that everyone should fill out the FAFSA form. And we'll talk a bit about deeper discounts. I did, up until recently, have a third bullet here, which talked about federal stimulus money. I know from my own personal experiences that a lot of that money that was given out, the first wave was about 16 billion nationwide, and then there was a second wave, and certainly my family benefited from that. I can tell you, having just gotten our aid awards for my son's sophomore year, that money is gone. So I removed that bullet, not to mislead anyone. We're coming back down to earth a bit in that respect. But I definitely want to emphasize here as my third bullet that everyone should be savvy consumers, especially in this day and age. So first topic here under economic conditions is that, file a FAFSA. And it's a free application for federal student aid, if you're not familiar with the acronym. And, I've talked to families about this over the years, and I inevitably encounter people who say they're just not going to do it, right? They just either feel that the form's too intrusive or that they're just not going to get any money anyway. And the reality is that, everyone in the sound of my voice should fill out the FAFSA, because there's no way any of us can predict what our economic situation is going to be 12 to 18 months from now. It's just that kind of world now. And, to the point of it being too intrusive, it's literally the same information you've already given the federal government with your file when you filed your tax forms. In fact, now it's a lot easier than when I was a student, because you don't have to, take your pen and the paper and fill out the little bubble and subtract 46C from 77B and carry the 1. It literally automatically uploads your prior year tax filings and fills in all those bubbles itself. So it's a lot more streamlined, less painful. So I definitely encourage families to do this and at least have the option. I'm a big proponent of having options. So if you don't fill out the financial aid paperwork, then you don't have the options. But if you do, you can decide what aspects of the package you want to accept. Certainly you want to accept the free money, right? Scholarships and grants, but whether you want to take the loan portions and so forth, it's entirely up to you. But you want to make sure that you're in the driver's seat with that when the time comes. So the next thing I want to explain to you guys is this idea of deeper discounting, right? So discounting is an increasingly common phenomenon in higher education, and it's being adopted by both publics and privates. And what it is tuition discounting is when schools advertise one price, right? And then they offer deals to reduce that amount for selected students to entice them to enroll. Part of this is leveraged by need-based financial aid. Other aspects can be merit-based. So I'll explain this concept a little bit more for you. But what you can see here are the discounted rates. So this is the percentage off the sticker price that schools both, have been taking over time. So this is an increasingly popular strategy for enrolling students. So I'll share a personal story to illustrate this concept of miracle merit money. So myself, I was surprised in going through the college search process with my son using net price calculators, right? So my son was a decent student, he was a B+, he was definitely college bound, but hadn't fully applied himself. Let's say that, okay? And so, his performance was what I would expect. And so you can imagine my surprise when he did apply and we started getting award letters with merit money discounting like $10,000, $15,000. No, don't get me wrong, I love my son, and of course he's special. But I mean, my school didn't give him that much merit money, I can tell you that. So, so it's definitely a tactic that many schools will use, and it can be really exciting. And don't get me wrong, if your student gets admitted to a really selective school that's got a huge endowment and that can fulfill all of a student's unmet need, that is amazing. But I get a little worried when it's the less selective schools that are discounting upwards of like 50%, right, off their sticker price. And because, I always imagine this in more personal terms, like if somebody cut my personal household income by 50%, it's not a sustainable revenue model. So, I'm going to circle back on that topic in a second, but just, be careful, read that fine print, be careful of how much of the loans, how much of it is money that you don't have to pay back. And nobody should make a decision about where they're going to enroll until you get all the information you need the spring of your senior year, when you have your admission letters and your award letters in hand and you're comparing apples to apples, because the sticker prices is not necessarily what you're going to be paying in almost any case. So, all right. So the word of caution. Boston Magazine put out an article just prior to the pandemic. In that 5-year stretch pre-pandemic, 8 colleges and universities had either closed or merged here in Massachusetts alone. And we've seen it accelerated a bit during the pandemic. I suspect that now that the federal stimulus money has gone away, the wheels are going to start coming off the cart at some of these places, right? So what I encourage everyone to do is to check out this article by Forbes magazine. It was published in 2019. This is the second time they've done it. And it's a fiscal report card on private colleges and universities across the country. So they explain their criteria. I won't do it justice, but it ranks them from A to F, right? And so I looked at the earlier version that they did, and many of the schools that had a C-D are no longer around. So I say this because I have fielded the calls from those students from Mount Ida or Newberry College and those parents who had paid multiple years of a private school education only so that their student school got closed down, and they ended up coming to Bridgewater and finishing up. And so, it very much is an environment of buyer beware. And I say that because, I want you guys to go forth with confidence, knowing that, wherever it is that you're going is a good investment. And I'm not just saying Bridgewater, we've been here since 1840. We're not going anywhere. This doesn't apply exclusively to publics. There are many publics that are in rough condition. We've seen Pennsylvania's closing campuses. Connecticut consolidated their community college system under one administration. So this is run rampant across our entire industry. And again, it's a correction. It's a market correction. We just have too many institutions and too fewer students now. So places are getting leaner and meaner, but it's just another variable for families to have to consider when you do make your final college choice. So, in summary, there is good news here for you in terms of our life, hopefully post-pandemic. You can look forward to more innovative online outreach, go to campuses, but if you can't, definitely get on the mailing list, go onto the website. As was mentioned earlier, every institution is going to track how you engage with them, whether you're on the mailing list, if you sign up for a tour, if you're on the website. Some of the more selective schools will actually use that. It's called an indicator of interests, right? So I have a good friend of mine whose son, very smart kid, applied to the University of Michigan. The whole family had gone to the University of Michigan. Well, don't you know, the kid never toured the University of Michigan. University of Michigan knew that, right? So if they're looking at 2 equally qualified kids and they have somebody who has visited and somebody who hasn't, remember the yield rate? The kid who has come to visit is more likely to be yielded to become enrolled. So they're going to give their admission to that kid and not to the one who stayed home. So just try to get out and engage with those places, especially the more selective schools. They are paying attention, and it's a little bit of a courtship, and at least in the early stages, you want to put yourself out there and show your interest until they send you the admission letter, and then you're in the driver's seat. So again, more offers of admission. You can look forward to that for all the conditions that we've covered, and more generous aid offers.
I was just going to interrupt and say, even after you get the admissions letter for some of these private institutions, and again, a personal story, not everybody will negotiate, but some will. And we were able to get a little bit more from my son from his college because they basically said, well, you've been here multiple times, you've done these visits, you seem like you're somebody you're not just saying, oh, it's between you and one other place. They really felt that was the case. So they believed us when we said we need a little bit more. And again, it was a private institution. They were able to do that. They gave us a little bit more. I don't think that would have happened if he hadn't gone on the visits, hadn't checked out the website, hadn't done all the, the interview. He went through all the whole process because it was one of his top. So if it really is, this is real life, this, especially now,
And thank you for sharing that. It's a great story, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the negotiation does not end at the acceptance letter in many cases in financial aid. And it's funny you say that too, because the kid who didn't get into the University of Michigan did get into Fordham, and they didn't give him a good aid package. So I sat down with the parents and said, well, first, second choice, what's the aid package look like? And we pitted one against the other, and they got they got a significant bump in the financial aid offerings.
Yeah.
And exactly to your point. So it's wonderful advice. The more interest that you can show, the more leverage you have.
And we are running a financial aid night on May 11th. So more information will go out about that soon.
Fantastic. Yeah. And again, can't stress enough. I mean, it's a complicated topic, and it's scary, and it's where the rubber meets the road for many families. But it is so important, because it's another option for families, to be able to access opportunities they might not otherwise afford with just cash on hand. So, in closing, I just want to say, having gone through this myself recently, it is scary, but it's exhilarating. And this is the culmination of all the effort that you guys have put into for so many years. So, in doing this, try to appreciate it for what it is. This is you taking your victory lap, hopefully. There's a lot of steps between today and the day where you make your final decision. So just, stick to your block and tackling, right? You listen to your counselors that have laid out a great plan for you guys. Now you got to work the plan. And, and there's a lot of emphasis on making this right choice. And I am literally having this conversation in my house again, the son who's finishing up his freshman year is thinking about transferring. This is a big decision. This is not the last decision you make in your life, right? This is just the next decision. And so you'll go to where it is you go, and hopefully it's a great fit, and it's, everything that you'd hope for. But if it isn't, it's just another opportunity to make another decision. And transferring is certainly an option for many, many students. And I'm sure your counselors at Norton High School would be happy to resend another round of transcripts, and to coach you through this. But increasingly, we're seeing more and more students transferring, and this is pre-pandemic. At Bridgewater, half of our new students every year, half are transfers. Half come from high schools, half come from other 2-year and 4-year schools from around the country. So, you should not be the same person going into college as you are coming out. And if you change, you can change your institution and fit your needs better. And in many cases, it can be easier to transfer into some of those selective schools than it is coming out of high school, depending on how well you do, in your first attempt at college. So whether it's a good fit or not, put your shoulder to the wheel and do as best you can when you get there, so that you continue to have options. But enjoy it. Enjoy the process. I hope this has been helpful. I'm happy to be a continuing resource for anyone from Norton, whether you're interested in Bridgewater or just questions in general. So thanks for having me tonight.
Well, thank you. And I would second that, Todd. It's been great to work with you, not just on this, but in the process, for as many of our students do apply, as you well know. So I do appreciate it. I don't know if anybody has any questions out there. If so, please put them in the Q&A. But otherwise, I'm going to thank you again, and thank our ASL interpreters and our closed caption folks as well. I really appreciate this. Like I said, it's going to go up on the website. I find like more and more people are just watching it the times they want to watch it. So
everything's on demand. Who watches
it? Is literally. I know
right?
we're gonna have to start having a streaming channel or something. So I do appreciate your time, Todd. We'll be talking, I'm sure, more in the future. And again, everybody have a good night, and thank you very much. Bye-bye now.